We attended every game or activity they ever did. We raised them in church. We tried to do the right things. We talked openly about drugs as much as we knew, which honestly was very little. And we talked about sex. And honestly, I was more worried about them having sex than drugs. That was just never really on my radar. We had zero tolerance for drugs. We tried to control their behavior even more so when we found out they were using. But all kids are not just experimenting. When you find your kid smoking pot and you think this is just a phase, I did this when I was young, they are not all just experimenting. And we found that out with our own kids. 1 in 4, about 25% of us, has a tendency towards addiction. That's a lot. 1 in 4 of us. Look how many people are in this room. 1 in 4 of us is an addict. Most people have addiction somewhere in their family tree. Look back at your parents, your grandparents' generations, aunts, uncles. There's probably more alcoholics than drug addicts, but that's quickly changing now. It's just like allergies. You don't know you have allergies until you're exposed to what you're allergic to. That's how drug addiction works. You don't know you're an addict until you start using drugs or alcohol. Addicts react differently to drugs or alcohol than non-addicts. Their high is much different than a non-addict. They get addicted much faster. And so no matter what we tried to do, our 2 boys continued to experiment with harder drugs until we discovered in 2007 that they were using heroin. Our 2 babies that were afraid of blood tests were using heroin. We caught the kids looking messed up, and they kept saying they were just smoking pot. We knew better, but we had no idea what it was. Luckily, I was working with a nurse at the time that started talking about how she knew her nephew was using opiates because his eyes were pinpointed. And I went home and told my husband, that's what our kids' eyes look like. So of course, we're instantly looking up opiates. What are they? Didn't even know that much. Found out they were painkillers, which of course the kids said they were just taking pills at the time because addicts like to downplay whatever they really are doing. We took them to a counselor, not knowing where to turn. The counselor agreed to help them. He should not have. He should have said, this is way above my pay grade, but he didn't. So they continued to use. Later that year, they went to their first of several drug rehab centers. They were in and out of rehab for years. I can't even describe the devastation to your family that's caused when your child has this disease. Lots of families deal with children with other diseases, and it's similar to that, where that diseased person gets more attention, except that most diseases are not brought on by our own bad choices and actions, and this one is. So the entire family gets angry. Their siblings are angry, the parents are angry, the entire family becomes sick. You look around at your neighbors and friends and you think, why are we the only ones with issues? What you don't know is how many of us there really are. It's just that no one is talking. You get resentful. You can't plan a family vacation. You can't plan anything because you don't know what's coming next or where they'll end up, whether they'll be in rehab or not, whether they'll be visiting Judge Jackson, who we know. He may not remember me, but I remember him. And he's very good. They've stolen from you. They'll rob you blind, your own children. It's amazing. And so you really don't have the money for vacation anyways. There goes the college money, and you begin to mourn. You go through like the stages of grief. You mourn for their youth that they're wasting when they should be having fun and graduating from high school. You lose hope that they'll ever get out of this, and you forget what normal even is. You see it in your neighbors, but it's not in your house at all. Your dreams slowly disappear. You spend way too much time trying to save them, and not enough time living for yourself. You're immobilized. Your goal becomes to save them. Our boys lived on the streets. They stole. They lied. They went to jail, which sometimes you're like, thank God, because they're safe. That was like the only nights I could sleep, is if somebody was in jail. These are middle-class kids choosing to live on the streets rather than at home because of this addiction. This was unbelievable to us. I'm generally a very positive, glass half full kind of person. I've never felt so alone or depressed in my entire life. I couldn't sleep. I tensed up every time the phone rang, especially at night. You're waiting for that call that your babies are never coming home. I lived in shame and guilt for anything wrong I ever said or did. What did we do wrong? I was afraid to tell people because I thought they would think it was our fault. We went through this for 4 years. In 2010, Brandon had been through yet another rehab. He did well. He graduated from it. One of the few times he actually finished. And he went on to college. He wanted to be a high school history teacher and a coach. He wanted to help keep kids off of drugs. He talked about having a prevention program in the county. He wanted to come back here and work. Things were finally getting better, and we even dared to be hopeful again. He was going to school year-round. He came home for the 4th of July break that summer. I noticed he looked thin. He said he was just riding his bike a lot, and that he would start eating more to make up for it. I was worried, but thought maybe I was just being paranoid. He went back to school, and shortly thereafter was arrested for shoplifting. He had been in trouble before, so this time he knew he was going to jail for a long time. I got a call from the college saying Brandon was missing. I spent 3 days looking for him with detectives. On the 3rd day, someone found him. When I got the call to quit looking and come back to college, I knew he wasn't found alive. He had taken his life. He left a note saying that he just didn't want to hurt us anymore, and he didn't want to live in the hell he had created for himself. There's no explanation for the amount of grief you feel when you lose a child. I don't even remember much of the first few months. You literally can't function. When people say your heart breaks, that phrase is because your chest hurts for months. You feel like you're having a heart attack for months. You can't sleep. You can't take a full breath. I honestly didn't want to live. I prayed for God to take me, and I'm sure I'm not alone with other parents that have lost children. I pray you never experience any of this, and that's why I'm here telling you my story. And I need a Kleenex. Thank you, but you're not done with me yet. I know you're all here to find out how you cannot end up like me, and I want that. I want to help you prevent this with your children, your neighbor, or whoever you come in contact with. So how do you prevent drug abuse? First, stop thinking this will never happen to you. You've heard that tonight repeatedly. Stop thinking that. Acknowledge that you have alcoholics and other addicts in your family. This is proven to be a disease. It's hereditary, and it's possible for anyone. Understand that drugs are now easier to get for your children than alcohol. Overdose is now the leading cause of death among young people. You heard that tonight, I think. He's talking about car accidents. He's talking about our county, Sheriff Piper. This is nationally. This isn't just our county. Overdose is the leading cause of death. In our county, there have been 33 911 calls regarding overdose year to date. There have been at least 15 deaths this year to overdose in the county. Get educated. We didn't see the signs early. We didn't know what to look for. We wrote it off as craziness of teens. You know, everything was just normal and hormonal. It's not all. Go to a class, read online, know more than your kids do. Your kids are way smarter than you, or at least they think they are. They're looking online, but they're looking in the wrong places. Go get the right information so you can talk to them about what those drugs they're taking are really doing to their brain, how their brain is not developed until they're 25, and how they're stunting their growth. Start talking early. Start at least in middle school. Educate your kids on how one possession charge can disqualify them from college. If you don't have anyone going to college yet, when you fill out that application, it's going to ask you if you have ever been accused or convicted of drug use, drug abuse, drug possession, something like that. You have to check yes or lie if they've ever had a possession charge. Drug test them. We should have done this much earlier. And you don't have to pay for the $45 drug test at CVS. Go to homedrugtestingkit.com. Write that down. Drug tests are $10 for a 10-panel. Test them for everything. Even just have it sitting out in the house so that they know you have it. Maybe they'll be less likely to experiment. At least some kids will. Don't let your kids drink, and especially don't let other kids drink at home. Even if your child is not an addict, their friend may be. And you don't want to live knowing you got them started. Look for signs: changing clothing, changing friends, sleeping in more, missing school, a general lack of motivation. Don't trust them. They're liars. They say they're going to be somewhere. I don't even trust all the other parents. You can call the parents. The parents may say yes, they're going to be there, but they may still leave. Keep GPS on their phones now. We didn't have that back then. Work together as a community, like you're doing tonight. Don't keep drug use a secret. If you think your child has a problem, ask for help right away. If you suspect another child has used, tell their parents. People ask me that all the time. Well, someone used, but I don't want to get involved in their life. I'm just going to stick to my own little world. No. Tell their parents. If something happens to that child and they overdose and you haven't said anything, you're living with that. Encourage your kids to be open with you and to tell teachers or parents if one of their friends is using. This is life or death. This is not gossip. This is when the kids need to be telling on each other. Drug users do not fit into a stereotype. They can be jocks, scholarly, artsy, whatever. We've been in a lot of parent groups. There's a lot of good parents out there with drug addicts. We've also had some of the cutest, most well-mannered, yes ma'am kids at our house that were shooting heroin in the basement. So don't think that you can tell by looking at them that they're drug users. You cannot. The high school kids I've talked to in the county have told me the majority are using drugs or have used drugs. It crosses all income levels, all cliques, all areas of the county. These are good kids making bad choices. If you think your kids are using, get support. It's really tough to not enable them. You want to believe them, but trust me, they're lying. We're organizing a support group like Al-Anon, but just for parents. The first meeting's tomorrow night at 7. You should have information in your bags. If not, you can see me after. Get support. Get your life back and get resources. You need to work with other parents that are in the same boat. You're not alone and you're not a bad parent. This is a great community. We're blessed to have it. I want all of us to work together to change the stigma of drug use from everyone is doing it to why would you do it? I'm Sherry Ajluni and I'm the parent of a drug addict.